Hello, how are you? Many people who are 50, 60, 70 years old or older say things like, I'm going to have a really healthy breakfast, natural juice, whole wheat bread, yogurt, granola. It all seems very healthy, but there's something that almost no one explains to you. Some of these breakfasts, which seem super healthy, can actually create an inflammatory environment that speeds up inflammation, insulin resistance, muscle loss, and the weakening of your bones over the years. And it's very important for us to understand this, because our bones are not a static structure. They're living tissue. People sometimes don't think about this. That is being rebuilt every day. The problem is that after 50 or 60 years of age, our bodies naturally start to lose bone mass and muscle mass more easily. And a lot of people think, I just need to take calcium. I don't need to worry about this anymore. I don't need to worry about my diet. But bone health depends on much more than that. So today, I'm going to explain it to you here, 5 types of breakfast that are extremely common, seem healthy, but may actually be worsening the metabolic and biological environment that would protect your bones. And at the end, I'm going to show you an idea for a delicious and healthy breakfast that you will definitely love. Stay until the end, because this could completely change the way you see your bone health and how do you take control of this in your daily life. Before we start, I want to ask you, what is your most basic everyday breakfast? I'm asking because people tend to repeat a little, 1 or 2 options of breakfast throughout the week. What is your basic breakfast like, the one you basically have every day? Write it for me down below, and I would love to see your comment. Leave a like on the video, it really helps me out. And if you know someone who wants help to improve this issue of bone weakness, share this video. Let's expand our chain of kindness. We know that after 50 or 60 years old, our bodies naturally start to lose bone and muscle mass more easily, right? This is really related to the aging process of our bodies. And a lot of people believe that this happens just because of a lack of calcium. People think like this, I'm not eating enough calcium, I need to supplement. Calcium, calcium and bone and calcium, right? As if they were that inseparable duo, and really, calcium is important for bones. But there's something very important that almost no one explains to you. Bone isn't just a motionless stone inside our bodies, right? We often think of bone as a tissue, something hard, strong. It's hard as it should be, it holds us upright. But it's a living tissue and many people don't know that. While you're watching this video, your body is literally removing old bone tissue and building new bone tissue. There's a real construction project happening right now inside your body, in your skeleton, all the time. And the problem is that as time goes by, several things can worsen this balance, tipping it more toward bone loss, instead of bone formation, which happens when you have less muscle in your body, less physical activity in your daily routine, more inflammation, more insulin resistance, consume less protein, less vitamin D, and even some hormonal changes, aging and metabolic factors can contribute to this. So it's not just a matter of eating more calcium, but rather looking at our diet in a different way. And when we think about nutrition, the first meal we have in our day has a huge impact on our bone health, for sure. A lot of people say, I'm going to start eating healthier. Breakfast is a very important meal of my day, so I'm going to choose good products. Sometimes people think with good intentions that they're eating healthy foods, but in reality, they might be eating a diet that's very high in sugar. A diet low in protein, with lots of ultra-processed foods, low satiety, and metabolically unfavorable for both muscle and bone. And there's something very important for us to remember. Muscle and bone, they're always together, literally side by side, and they age together. In fact, there's even a term in science today called osteosarcopenia, which is precisely the combination of bone loss and muscle loss. And this greatly increases the risk of falls, fractures, weakness, pain, and loss of independence after age 60. We don't want that, right? So now I'm going to show you basically 5 types of breakfast that the vast majority of people unintentionally have thinking they're doing great, thinking they're making a good combination, but it could actually harm their health. The first style of breakfast, which many people have in various parts of the world, is that breakfast that's richer in sweets and carbohydrates. Sometimes people even think it's healthy. A breakfast cereal, a granola that's actually very sugary. Or have a piece of toast and then add jam or make a pancake but loaded with sugar or white flour. And then, of course, waffles, bread with cream, sweets. We're not even talking about cake, sweetbread, cookies that people eat in the morning. All of this seems relatively normal in today's breakfast with the rush of daily life. The problem is that many of these meals are made up mainly of fast-absorbing carbohydrates and sugar, as you saw. So there's not much protein there either, and that really matters for our health after a certain age because muscle and bone, as I mentioned to you, age together. And when someone starts the day with a meal that's very high in sugar and low in protein, there's a greater tendency to have glucose spikes, more insulin, less satiety, more hunger throughout the day, worse food choices during the day, and also more metabolic inflammation. And today, we know that chronic inflammation and insulin resistance directly affect bone tissue. So, in addition, proteins are fundamental to maintain muscle mass and the very structural matrix of our bones. So, it's interesting for us to realize that this breakfast, which is sometimes very convenient, I'll just buy something and eat it, can indeed be harming our bones. The second type of breakfast is the one that's more based on liquid foods. Sometimes I'll have a fresh fruit juice, I'll make a smoothie, I'll have a strong coffee, because I'm not very hungry, so I just want to drink something in the morning. Or even to add to that, you might include it in that first example I mentioned to you. Fruit juice, even if it's natural, it all depends on the type of fruit you use and the quantity. If it's an orange juice and you use 4 or 5 oranges, the amount of carbohydrates is incredible, isn't it? So this also comes down to the issue of excess sugar. A smoothie, for example, if it's made with avocado and skim milk, is completely different from one made with milk, banana, granola, and honey. You see? The amount of carbohydrates there will always have a big impact, as will the proportional amount of protein and fiber. Actually, the problem isn't just the carbohydrates, but rather the metabolic imbalance from the rest of that meal, the metabolic impact it can have. And in the same way, those gourmet coffees, which are really common nowadays, right? In fact, there are people who go out, buy these, and keep drinking them throughout the morning. It's just liquid. But sometimes there's whipped cream, condensed milk, heavy cream, syrup, a whole bunch of things in there. So it's a calorie and sugar bomb as well, which will also be harmful in the same way, encouraging the issue of glycemic fluctuations, more hunger, more metabolic inflammation, and less energy stability as well. In fact, I keep emphasizing this point about insulin resistance because we already know that insulin resistance and chronic inflammation are linked to poorer muscle quality, more loss of lean mass, and greater bone fragility as we age, right? So many people might end up replacing full meals with drinks, as I mentioned to you. And then for sure, the intake of protein and minerals will be worse for your muscle mass and the proper metabolic metabolism you would need at that time of day. So it might seem light in the sense that it doesn't weigh on your stomach, but it's a metabolic mess for you. The third type of breakfast, which sometimes is also eaten alone or combined with everything I've already mentioned before, are breakfasts based on salty, ultra-processed foods. So there are people who eat a lot of bacon, ham, salami, mortadella, cold cuts, and sometimes sandwiches with that, an omelet that seems healthy, with a toast with this kind of thing. So sometimes you mix good things and not so good things in your breakfast. And we know that these products are very rich in sodium, nitrites, highly processed fats, pro-inflammatory. They worsen metabolic inflammation, right? So once again, low-grade chronic inflammation harms the muscles, harms the bones, and impairs the formation of bone tissues. And besides that, sometimes people combine this with white bread, even French fries in the morning, right? Depending on how rushed they are, a lot of processed sauces, very little fiber. So breakfast ends up becoming a metabolic chaos for your bones. Another type of breakfast that's bad for your bones, which has become very common lately. And people think they're making a good choice. Those breakfasts based on industrialized fit products like fit cookies, cereal bars, protein bars, granola, which all have a healthy appeal. More processed, sweetened yogurt, ready-made shakes that replace this meal, whole grain cereals, which sometimes don't even have whole grains as the first ingredient on the list. All of this is marketed as healthy by the food industry, but when you look at the label, that's not the case. So what you always have to check is the food label. Always remember, right, what comes first is what there is the most of. Check the amount of fiber, check the amount of fat, what type of fat it is, if it's trans, if it's saturated. You have to check the amount of protein. We need to know how to read the label. I have a really cool video here teaching you how. I'll leave it down below in the description. And lastly, of course, breakfast, which is low in protein, which ends up being a bit of all of these, sometimes on their own or mixed together, one with another. But when someone eats just cereal with juice, a piece of toast with sweetened coffee, with whipped cream, a pancake with jam, or even a high-calorie drink, all of that, right? When you have a lot of simple carbs, consequently, many times, you'll have little protein, little fiber, and few minerals that are good for your bones. So, thinking about what could be interesting, a delicious option for your daily routine could be, for example, a breakfast based on an omelet where you add vegetables or even tuna or chicken if you prefer a savory option. Eggs are excellent for breakfast. They provide a lot of satiety, contain complete protein, albumin, and choline, which is good for the liver as well as for the brain. So, it's excellent for our health. And if you prefer a sweeter option, right, a classic that always works well is natural yogurt, or kefir with strawberries or with berries or with a fruit that has a lower glycemic index along with chia or psyllium. So, if you even want to add more protein, a bit of whey to mix in for extra satiety, that can be a good idea. So it's always about that, right? Trying to look for a good source of protein. If you want to add carbohydrates in the morning, choose carbohydrates with a low glycemic index, lots of fiber to keep you full, and vitamins and minerals that are good for your bones. Let me know down below if you identified with any of these breakfast options that aren't so great. What are you going to change? I would love to see your comment. Leave a like on the video to help me out and share it with someone who would enjoy it. Let's expand our chain of kindness because that's what I want here on the channel. See you next time. Bye.